Why hello there, it's Totally Jade here, and we're here at this little test world to test every single event controller function. But not to worry, the video is going to be broken up into chapters along the bottom so that you can easily follow along or just pop back to whatever you need to in the future. So let's get started. This here, we have a little simple hover bike, and it has exactly one event controller on it so far, and it is set up so that this event controller has the threshold at 20 meters. Now, why would we have it like that? Well, because when we're flying this hover bike around, we don't want it to go too high or too low, so we have it sit at 20 meters. So now, how do we accomplish this? Now, this event controller is set for the altitude controlling event. It's set to 20 meters, as discussed before, and anything equal to or less than 20 meters will make sure that whatever it outputs is its true output, or the first output. So in here in select actions, we have for the first output on the left, which is our true, and the second output on the right, which is our false. We have the thrusters on for when we're at or below 20 meters, and we have the thrusters off as soon as we get above 20 meters. So that would cause a behavior like this. You get in the vehicle, and at 18 meters, you're fine. Anything below that, you're fine. But what was that? As soon as we hit 20 meters, the atmospheric thrusters came off. This will help us hold around 20 meters so we don't have to worry about not being a hover vehicle. Drop this off here, and we'll move on to our next example. Now this example is called angle changed, and this bridge here is set up with two rotors, one of which is the kind of just like a guide rotor, and the other one is our active rotor, the angle changed hinge. Now given that this little tick mark is up here, anything beyond this sort of point is negative numbers. So in theory the hinge should be at negative 90 right now. Now I've already tested this opening and closing it. When it's at its full open position, the hinge is around -1. So we're going to set our event controller to look at the angle changed event. And when it's equal to or greater than -1, so anytime it goes towards 0 on this number line or towards positive numbers, that our action goes through. Now, how do we pick what hinge that we want? Towards the bottom here, there's a nifty little search bar that allows you to search for whatever rotor or whatever relevant component you can. So here we have different rotors that we can select. And as you can see here, I already have the angle changed hinge selected, which is the hinge for this door. So when the hinge reaches this anything bigger than -1, it's going to turn on this timer block, which in this timer block, it waits 10 seconds. And it closes the bridge so that you don't leave your bridges open. So let's hit this button and let it to reverse. And the timer block activates. And I have about 10 seconds to walk across this grid. And once you're across, it'll retract. It takes a little bit of time, but 10 seconds is 10 seconds. So this next one, we already have our grinder, and this is the block added or removed. So in the event controller, when you have the block added or removed event, there's no extra things. This looks at all the blocks on the grid. So anytime a block is added to the grid or removed from the grid, it'll activate. So in this case, on the left is block added, and on the right is block removed. And we're turning on the vault turrets to stop the would-be thief from getting their free space credits. Fantastic. Next up, we have a simple block integrity percentage for the event controller. So what's going to happen is, well, what we want to happen is once this gets below a threshold, say 90%, this welder will turn on and repair it so that your turret doesn't get destroyed so easily. So let's arm ourselves. It's set to the event block integrity with equal to or less than. So if it ever equals 90 or gets below it, and again, we see this menu, we can select the blocks that would be relevant for this, and we can have it as this example Gatling turret. So anytime that is below 90, which is its true state, it's going to turn the welder on, and anytime it's above 90, it's going to turn the welder off. So let's try this out. We're at 90% right now, and let's watch really closely on the welder there. There we go. The welder's on. And it's back up to 96. We might be out of steel plates, which is why we're not recovering any of those. How many times have you gotten out of your early game miner only to remember that you forgot to turn the antenna on and all of your ore detections disappeared? Well, we got you covered with an event controller here. These event controllers can also sense when a block has been turned on or off. So for instance here, we have block on-off switch, that nifty menu to pick whatever blocks can be turned on. And in this case, we picked our example ore detector. And now the actions are to turn the antenna on as soon as that block turns on, or turn it off as soon as that block turns off. So let's see it in action. Now watch for the antenna signal. There it is, 12.5 meters away towards the top of the screen. And it get closer. There it goes as soon as you turn it off. Now that's kind of a lame example. There's a cooler one over here. So with this ship here, let's bring it down to nighttime so we can get some good vibes with it. We have the event controller set to monitor the drill. Now this waits for the drill to be turned on, and what's useful when your drill is turned on? Well, some lights so you can see with. So we have the lights turning on in conjunction with the drill. So we could have mining lights or different indicators going on, but as soon as we turn that drill on, all the lights pop on here. So now to the next example. Now I tried to keep most of these practical, but this one didn't end up being the most practical use case. It is still pretty cool though. So we're monitoring our cargo container fill. We have cargo containers back here. And once these two get to 100%, they're kind of representing your ship. We're going to want to start throwing stuff out. Like for an example, if you have a miner, you might want to start throwing stone out at a certain point. In this case, the cargo filled percentage event is picked. We're going to go to equal or greater than. So anytime those two cargo containers are more than 80%, we select the cargo containers out of all the blocks with an inventory. And in this case, I want both of them to be at 100%. So we go ahead and tick this AND gate button on the bottom. And that indicates to the event controller to wait for both of these to reach, or as many as you put them in there, wait for everything in here to reach the percent, or to match this condition before it activates its true state. And in this case, our true state is to turn on the connector to throw out, and to set it on to collect all, so it can drain those cargo containers. So let's switch this on to move material from that example thing to the two cargo containers we're looking at. And there we go. The rocks fall down, and this little sensor here turns that off so they don't start spilling rocks everywhere. And now, every time your cargo is filled past the threshold, you can empty out your ship automatically. This next one I think is really cool. You can start activating your ship. You can turn on certain functions or features or lights or something as soon as you hop into your cockpit. So, but in this case, we want entering the cockpit to connect us to this mounted gun and open this door so we can shoot out the side of our pirate ship. So we're going to go into the event controller, set it for Cockpit Occupied, select this cockpit out of all of those. And for the actions, we're going to turn on the rotor so that when the cockpit's occupied, you can spin around and connect to your gun. This is only if you get out of the rotor, it disconnects and spins back to where it's supposed to be. This toggles the rotor to reverse. This sets it to go reverse again once you get out. This turns on the merge block so it's ready to merge. And this opens the door. So let's go ahead and try it out. We hop into the cockpit. It spins around nice and cool like. Door opens up. We're merged. And we're free to shoot at those pesky merchant ships. Now this next example is a bit 2 for 1. We have connector proximity and connector connected. So whenever a connector is in proximity, you probably just want to connect it, which is what we're doing here. And then as soon as the connector is connected, we want to set systems on the ship so that the batteries go to recharge and it starts draining all of its inventory. So let's see how this is set up. In here, we have a connector ready to lock, and it gives you your options once again. We selected this connector, which is the example docky connector. Then we go to select actions, and all we have to do is lock. So it's pretty cool. The next one is waiting for that lock. So once the connector is connected, either by this event planner or a player, we're still watching the example docky container. And now we're going to set those batteries to recharge, set the main battery to recharge, and collect all in the docky connector. You're not going to see those first ones because the grid hasn't been reconnected to this grid yet. Let's go ahead and turn on its AI features and set it to go. Now it should follow a planned planned maneuver and come in for a landing. So now that it's all connected, it's collecting all of the inventory from the grid, and we can move on to our next example. Ta-da! We have a little bridge and a little piston elevator. Alright, so this next example here is distance to lock target. Now we have a bunch of hungry missiles here raring to go. You can hear them clanging around, but we have to activate them first. So here we have our command block, or our event controller with the toggle. It's currently toggled off, waiting for the seat to be occupied. For these missiles we have here, once the distance to the target is less than 1,040 meters, it's going to go ahead and release them with the missile example connectors. And that's about it. They should be ready to go at that point. So let's hop into the cockpit here, set our piston to extend, hope that they lock to the right target. And they're released, and they all fell to the ground. I'm gonna guess they didn't have any tank or fuel in their hydrogen. Yeah, the hydrogen tanks were empty. Just bear with me a moment. All right, this is what they're supposed to do. Here we go. Woo! There's the missiles. Look at them go. They have no concept of what is high or low. They've all managed to miss the target, but they're coming back. Hold on, this could get interesting. Let's head on over here in our spectator camera. It looks like they were all defeated. Let's grab a couple more. Yeah, they're not the most effective missiles. Granted, I think they're just targeting the power systems on here. That one didn't even detonate. Whoa, that one was still around? I didn't even see that one. But you kind of see the idea. I'm not the best at missiles. They give me a little bit of issues sometimes. Oh, there we go. That one detonated. All right. So that grid is completely vanished, and that missile just decided to just lay down for the day. All right. All right. Well, that was cool. So let's hop down here to our next example. Follow the signs to the door opened example. So anytime you open a door, like you walk into your ship, you open your door, or you want to trigger an airlock mechanism for some reason, we have this event controller to get you. We have all of the possible doors on the grid by selecting the door open thing. We selected this door, the door open example offset door. Once the door is opened, it's set to dispense the little surprise that we have waiting inside. So let's go ahead and open that up, and there they are. We've dispensed all the plushies. They're now all over the ground everywhere, and overflowing out of the room. And door closed does nothing because, well, we don't have a second condition set for that. So we want these plushies to be here permanently. All right, our next example is one of my favorite things we can do with the event planner blocks so far. Or the event controller. I keep calling them event planners. We have a gas filled meter. So we're monitoring this this hydrogen tank with all 5 of these here, because we have one for 0%. So whenever that gas tank, it works on subgrids by the way, is at 0% or less than it somehow, it goes ahead and turns on that red 0% LED panel and starts the timer block so that little panel can start flashing. Now, anytime it's at 25% or above, the next level comes on. And when it loses that state, that next level turns off. And so on and so forth until we get to 100% and all of them are lit up. So let's go ahead and see that in action. I think it looks a little bit cooler at night. So we'll just drop the lights a little bit. We got the ominous flashing red. Then we'll turn off the stockpile for the main base tank. Turn on the stockpile for this one, and would you look at that? As the container fills, you start to see all of the lights light up here. This would be good if you're planning to, fly around and get notified when your fuel's low or below a certain percentage, or when your fuel tanks are full and your ship's ready to go. These are event planners that are perfect for you. Or you could make a little display like I did here, because those are fun. I suppose you could do all 100% of it, but that would be a lot of LCDs. All right, the next example here is we have our hover bike again, and we have a new event controller on it. And this one simply monitors your speed. Because if you notice, while flying any sort of hover bike from the workshop or not, they tend to run into an issue when your terrain changes really quickly under you. So this one's set to keep you at a low speed, so when that terrain changes, it has more time to react and get you right above that threshold. This is grid speed change. Anything less than 30 meters per second. We'll have this condition here, which turns off the warning LCD. Turns on your forward thrust, so you're allowed to use it. But anytime you go over 30 meters per second, it turns off your forward thrust and turns on the warning LCD, like this. Yep, we're over speed. And it shuts down that front engine so we can not overdo it with speed on this machine. Alright, next up here, the same thing as the connector. It has a landing gear ready and a landing gear lock state. So here, as soon as the landing gear is ready, which is the example landing gear, we're going to set it to lock. And then this next step here, as soon as it's locked, we selected the example landing gear. It's going to tell the crane rotor to reverse, raise up the pistons, and prepare to be dropped. So these are the angle changed from before. So once that rotor is at that angle, it's going to release the cargo and it's going to drop it in. And this one is going to reverse the process. So let's go ahead and push the button here and let's get rid of our pesky obstacle. We're connected to it. And it picks it up and away. Oh, I left the dampeners on, but that's fine. Not going to hurt it any. This crane's going to slowly rotate around. And we're going to recycle our ship so we can do the third part of reduce, reuse, and recycle. Oh, it falls so gently with the dampeners on. And it returns to position, ready to pick up the next thing in this red area. Now, next up, we have something useful for sailing over the moon, it looks like. No, we have something useful for, I don't know, loading missiles, whatever would you like. It's merge lock, or merge block merge. So as soon as the merge block is merged, you can set some sort of other condition. And just like we're doing here, as soon as the merge block is merged, we're watching the merge blocks on the ends of those missiles. We also have it as the AND gate, so once both of the missiles are connected, we do the second action, or the first action. So once they're both merged, we go ahead and turn off or unlock the connectors and turn off the merge blocks so that they can get out, and also retract the pistons. So let's go ahead and see that in motion. So we come through here. This one merges first, but nothing happens. And then once this one is merged, they all disconnect and the pistons retract. Simple as. Now your fighter has new missiles and they're ready to go. So this next one is a bit complicated. It uses a lot of event planners, or 3 precisely, to basically make a staged rocket. And excluding the payload stage here, all of this stuff at the bottom, I believe you have enough metal grids for if you start out on your small little ship. So you can get something into space really quick with something like this. So let's go ahead and lock our dampers to it. Oh wait, before we even get started, I was getting a little overzealous there. We're going to go ahead and check the event controller for here, which would be the stage 1 event controller. So once the grid speed reaches less than 90%, equal to or less than 90%, it's going to go ahead and turn off these atmospheric thrusters, open the parachute doors, turn off the merge blocks, and turn on our core stage, so that as soon as they start to become ineffective, we switch to a more effective thrust source. So let's look at Event Controller 2 for the core stage. So the core stage is going to wait until the gas tank's at 0.3%. Then it's going to turn on the ion thruster of the upper stage, disconnect the upper stage, open its own parachute, and continue back to the planet. Now for the third stage, which is our payload here, once the gravity, the natural gravity, the star of this example, once the natural gravity is equal to or less than 0.04 Gs, which is practically nothing, it's going to start an automation. It's going to start a timer block, which is going to ramp down the thrust override of the main ion drive, then turn on the AI move behavior, turn on the offensive AI, because this is a space mine. It's meant to sit up there in space above your base just to give so many people trying to sneak up on you from orbit. And this here is just the reversed ion thruster, so that's not fighting itself with dampeners the whole time. All right, let's give it a shot. Let's see how this thing goes. All right, we've taken off. All right, so far better than the first Starship launch. We haven't exploded yet. And we're also, with build vision, able to see that the effectiveness of the thruster is decreasing, and it's dropping off rather quickly. So once it gets below a certain point, this grid's no longer going to be able to maintain the 100 meters per second, and it's going to start slowing down. That's when our timer block's going to kick in and get rid of that dead weight for us. But it'll give it a parachute so that it can get home and we can collect it and use it on our next ship. Ah, there it was. We just dropped below the speed, apparently. I didn't see that quickly. But those are heading down and ready to deploy their parachutes. And we have our main thruster on, and we're continuing on into orbit. So we're getting really close to our value here. As soon as we get to that 0.3%, this drops off, ready to return home, and the next stage is on its way. All right, we're getting pretty close to our objective gravity here. We're pretty far from the planet. There we are. We're now at 0.4 gravity, well, less than 0.4. And it's decelerating, and all of the AI components are on. We can just double check that. Yep, the AI behavior is on for the rocket, or for the offensive AI and the flight AI. Our forward ion thruster no longer has override, and it's all good. So that's good to leave there and let it, do its own thing. Our next example is something really cool you can do in Space Engineers. We can have elevators using piston position percentages. So that is one of the options in the event controller. So for this one, this is the ground floor. Anytime the piston is at equal to or less than 0%, it turns off the piston. You'll see why in a minute. And it turns on the event controller for floor 1, and it turns on the event controller for floor 2. But it also turns itself off, because if it stays in its position, it's probably going to get the piston stuck there. Every time you go to move the piston, it's going to be like, hey, the piston's at this position, which I told it to stop at. So that's why we shut it off. So this is one for floor 1. Basically waits till the pistons we selected's positions are at 87.5%, or either of them are at 87.5%, because it's not an AND gate. Then anytime it's that or below, it shuts off the piston. It turns on the ground floor 1, turns on floor 2, and turns itself off. For floor 2, it does pretty much the same thing, except at the floor 2 position, which is a 99.8% of the piston's travel. So let's go ahead and set the elevator come down and grab it for me right here. There we go. We can go ahead and go to the ground floor, or we can go to the second floor. So let's go to the second floor here. If you download this world from the workshop, you could explore the ground floor. There's nothing there. Oh, okay. It appears our little gantry's been destroyed. Okay, we'll just fly on the other side. That was supposed to be a cool little thing, but that's fine. It's like the third time it's done that, so we're just gonna ignore it. All right, so this is, I think, my second favorite, if not favorite one, is I was going to do a event planner based solar tracker, which would have used probably 4 panels, sort of like you do nowadays with a little Arduino and 4 photocells. But this way is a little better because now the turret controller, you just set it up like a normal turret, slap a camera on the front, and now it'll track the sun. That's awesome. That removes so many mods, which kind of sucks, but it's kind of pretty cool at the same time. All right, so power output basically monitors a block that can output power, like a reactor or a battery. In this case, we have it monitoring solar panels. So when both of these solar panels get below our threshold, which is 0.1% of their output, it's every time it's equal to or less than. So once the power output drops below that threshold, we turn off the turret controller. We set the rotors to reverse so they can go into the stowed position. The pistons retract, and the custom turret controller gets the aim always at sun toggle off again. Sometimes it doesn't stick. Next up is this timer block next to it. It's also activated by that event controller. It simply waits 5 seconds and then turns the aim at sun back on, because for some reason it doesn't stick, like I just said. So let's switch it to nighttime and see what this thing does. There we are. It moves the solar panels to the stowed position. Oh, we get a nice view of the first stage coming back here. And the pistons come down. So no longer is your base a beacon of telling everyone where you are. You have this big solar panel that is now a lot lower, so you can hide amongst the trees. Because as soon as it becomes daytime, all of a sudden this beacon comes rising up from above the trees to tell you exactly where this base is. But it looks cool as shit, especially from out here. We have the rotor hinge attached detached, which I struggled to find a use for. If you have a use for this, just let me know in the comments what it would be. Because I know the old way of attaching missiles and stuff was with rotor heads, which was pretty clever, but subgrids kind of suck. I like the new connectors. They work better. But I don't know what I would use this attached thing for now. Maybe it's for walkers or something. Well, anyways, we have this little drone here that doesn't fly too well in gravity. So we're going to give it a little push and see if we can get it to go. So how we're going to do that, we have this rotor set to max speed. And we have its limit set. But right now it's locked. So in the event controller, we're going to watch for when this rotor or hinge is attached or detached, which is this top rotor right here, which is the one holding the missile onto the little launch platform. So we're going to set the thrower to reverse as soon as it detaches so that it can go back into its stowed position. And that's about it. The rest of it happens in this event controller, which sees when this rotor reaches 85% of its range to set the rotor, or to turn on the thrusters for the, and to detach it so that it doesn't get smacked by the rotor as it goes up. This button right here just turns off the lock, and let's see how this goes. I probably should have planned that a bit better. Well, the missile didn't fly too well, so that's all okay. That's all good. So next step is stored power. So we're back here with the Athos miner, and it has an event planner in it that once the stored power of the main battery reaches below 5% or below, it turns on the reserve batteries, which, what's the point of having reserve batteries? Well, you're out, you haven't looked at the time in a little while, and suddenly you're out of power and your ship's falling from the sky. It's only happened to me once, I swear. To help inform you that you're having a bit of a power issue, you have a little LCD that comes on in front to warn you, and it switches the reserve batteries on for you. You could probably set a warning a little earlier. So I'm going to have to move this thing for quite a while to get it to the percentage we need. But I just happen to have another miner here that allows us to see what happens when it reaches that position. So the reserve batteries are on. We have this little low power LCD on right there. These batteries are on. This one is dead now, which is perfect. It's working as intended. You still have enough power to fly around with these. Maybe not as much as you would like, but enough to get you home safe. Well, unless you're as bad at landing as I am. Oh, it looks like our first stage has returned. We'll just kind of push that over there. So this next one is an extremely cool one, and it allows you to do subgrid thrusters. Not in the way you might be thinking, like with the script, but it allows you to toggle them in vanilla. So this is thrust percentage. So you can do crazy things like diagonal thrusters, so you can do the work of a forward and a side thruster, but in the axis that you're flying. It's all extra cool. So let's hop in here and look at this event controller. We already have one to lower the wings as soon as we get in. Very cool. So this one checks if we're going forward. So it's monitoring the thrust percentage of the forward large hydrogen thruster. And as soon as it reaches above 93%, it goes ahead and retracts the piston and sets those forward thrusters to on. Same thing in the reverse direction. Once the thrust is above 93%, but of the reverse hydrogen thruster, which is that front one there, it goes ahead and raises up the piston so we don't scorch the back of our ship, and runs these other two. So I'll show you this right now. And we'll go ahead and fire our forward thruster so we can see how that looks. Already cool. We have subgrid thrusters running and clanging around. But if we throw in our dampeners, it rises up and slows us down, which is really, really fun. I can imagine a lot of subgrid thrustering happening. Now, one of the things the event controllers aren't too good at, a case like we have here, if you notice, these top thrusters are kind of just added on, because originally I intended it for when you went to decelerate, the top rotor would flip, the hinge would flip, and those forward thrusters would become reverse thrusters in that instance. But for some reason, with the event controllers, if you have them monitoring a position and the position doesn't change, for some reason they just quit monitoring the position, even if the position does change later. Not sure if that's a bug or an intended feature, but either way, it's really annoying. I really hope you learned something here. This should be uploaded to the workshop with this fixed and a few other fixes, but I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching, and happy engineering.